Recording.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming. We're excited to help you all learn different note-taking styles that you can apply to your classes to enhance your learning. I would like to first start off by acknowledging that the location where many of us work, learn, and live is located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam people. This presentation is presented by your CAS committee, who have all collaborated to identify the various study techniques that we think are useful and have worked for us in our classes. Today, we will discuss annotating lecture notes using OneNote and PDF, writing notes using a notebook. We will then go on to discuss using Google Docs to take notes, rewriting notes after class, and the benefits of using Quizlet or cue cards. We will also provide tips for taking notes regarding textbook readings. Before we get started with the presentation, something to keep in mind is that one note-taking style will not work for everyone, and this is all about identifying what works for you. With that, we will get started and I will pass it off to Saprita.
Hi everyone, my name is Saprita, and today I will be talking to you about the different ways you can take notes and annotate them during your lectures. So there are three main methods you can use to do this. First, you may download the lecture slides and import them onto OneNote or another note-taking app before the lecture. Or you can even type out the information on the lecture slides before class. And if you're someone who likes to go old school using pen and paper, you may also print out the slides as handouts before class. These methods are efficient as you're not wasting time copying down what is already on the slide during lectures. It is also easier than having to draw out flowcharts or diagrams, especially in your systems physiology classes, Kin 150 and Kin 120, as you will see lots of these. Moreover, it also enables you to listen to the professor more attentively and grasp the concepts that are being explained. The key things I would advise you to do while taking notes are highlight or underline key concepts covered by the professor on the slides. Note down the important points the professor says in another color, and also note down information from the textbook in a different color. These strategies will help you keep track of where exactly your information is coming from, making your revision a lot easier, especially because some of these courses specifically and separately test things from textbooks, labs, and class notes. So, some of you may also be wondering what the key things are that one should write down during lectures. Based on my previous experiences, here are some things I would strongly advise. Examples or scenarios the professor uses to explain concepts are very important, especially during Kin 150 and Kin 160. This is useful to understand the material, key in reinforcing learning during revision, and it's also mostly how professors test knowledge in exams via the MCQ questions. Please don't take note of definitions as they're already given in textbooks or can also be found online, since theory is theory. Focus on comprehending what the professor is saying regarding it. Ask questions in lectures to check your understanding and write or underline keywords. In online lectures, make sure to pay attention to what questions the professor asks and the responses generated in the chat box. For example, in your Kin 150 class, your professor might ask you about the advantages and disadvantages of positive reinforcement. And in Kin 120, Maria Gallo might ask you about the different ways of applying the fit principle to a particular case in Kin 120. In recorded lectures, this becomes much easier to focus on what the professor is saying once the information on the slides have been noted down earlier. Similar to live lectures, just note down or underline key phrases said by the professor and focus on noting down the examples. For example, in Kin 150, it could be key elements of what counts as extrinsic or intrinsic motivation and supporting examples. In Kin 160, it could be key terms defining power relations in different areas where this is observed, like social stratification, race, ethnicity, disability. And in Kin 120, I know Maria Gallo uses a lot of examples to talk about which method of training or testing is most appropriate. Pay attention to those. And remember, don't worry if your annotations are messy because they can always be corrected later.
Okay, so next is writing notes with PDF and OneNote, and we'll talk about the benefits of this method just after looking at the format. So this is what your screen might look like. So you'll have PDF notes on the left side and then OneNote on the right. This can also be done with an iPad, which might fall more under annotating. Note that you can also use other apps. For example, it doesn't have to be PDF on the left side. You can use PowerPoint, and on the right side, you can also use a Word document or other apps such as Notability. In terms of the benefits of using this format, or OneNote specifically, you can easily download slides into an iPad and use your pen to draw on the notes. You can easily write, type, or draw into OneNote. And finally, OneNote has a really nice organization that we'll go over next. So as you can see, there says add notebook, and you can do this for each class. It also said add section, and then the section might depend on the class. So for example, you might do module 1, module 2, or week 1, week 2, or it can be more specific, like in Kin 132, you might have the immune system and the digestive system. And then finally, it says you can add a page. I would probably recommend adding 1 page per class or maybe 1 page per lecture. So talking about how to take notes using this format, as the prof goes through the lecture slides, make sure you are on the same slide as them and follow along as best you can. On the OneNote side, type information that isn't already on the slide. Don't write everything they say. It's extra things that the prof says that you'd want to write down. This is why having the slides centimeters away from your notes is beneficial. You can see what they're repeating and catch on to new information. Once the prof moves on to a new slide, do something to your notes to know that the prof changes slides. So for example, I hit enter twice to start a new paragraph. That way I know that the prof switched slides. For online lectures or recorded lectures, I would have the recording on the left side of your screen and then notes on the right side. So same sort of concept. This form of note taking might be more beneficial for profs who talk a lot more than just what's written on the slide. For example, I found this method particularly useful for Kin 132, as there was lots of pictures with verbal explanations from the prof and lots of examples. For profs who mainly read off the slide, annotating notes, like Saprita mentioned, might be better because you might only need to catch information for a few slides out of the whole presentation.
Hi guys, so this is note taking with a notebook. So as you know, as we transition back into in-class learning, using a notebook to write your notes may be extremely helpful. If you look to the right here, there's a sample of how to label your notes in accordance to the slide number. This way you can refer to your notes with each corresponding slide and therefore write everything that is not written down. This is also incredibly useful when you need to draw diagrams, which a laptop often does not permit. Also, I found that when I'm typing, it's rather passive. So by writing down concepts, I feel like this helps me better solidify the knowledge during lecture. Specifically, I did this for Kin 110 online, which I know has a lot of diagrams, and using a notebook may be helpful for drawing them up. This also applies to courses such as 131 and 132, where there are often diagrams and flowcharts that are a lot easier to write out on a notebook in comparison to a computer.
Hi, I'm going to be talking about the next note-taking technique, which involves using Google Docs. This style of note-taking involves working on your notes before, during, and after lectures. This allows you to retain information over a longer period of time, and it makes studying for tests and examinations a lot easier. Before lectures, I recommend looking at the lecturer slides if they're posted them already, or the textbook readings that correspond to the content that you're going to learn about. With these materials, you can start a writing document, and to set up the document, I recommend writing a learning objectives from the PowerPoint or the textbook at the top of the page, so you can easily locate concepts when you're studying. After that, write in the subtitles of the slides and background information that you need to better understand the concept. For example, in Kin 120, if you're unsure about what gluconeogenesis is and you're studying the stress management unit, I recommend researching this process on your own and writing your own notes on it prior to lecture. During lecture, just like Saprita said, I recommend typing the information that the lecturer emphasizes and creates examples for. These are important concepts that they want you to remember, so they will re-say them in different ways. For example, in Kin 110, tin sometimes refers to how muscles look when you're looking at a muscular person, such as how tensor fasciae latae looks like a small square muscle at the pelvic region. Also, I know sometimes it is hard to keep up with lectures as they have to teach a lot of information in such a short period of time. So if you miss something, don't panic. I recommend writing a little note on the side of the document as a comment, which will act as a reminder for you to look up the information post-lecture. After the lecture, the first thing that you should do is look up the concepts that you missed either on Google or from the textbook. Since you just came out of lecture, the information you just learned about is still fresh in your mind, so it will be easier to remember possible details that the lecturer said. After that, I recommend fixing up the document by correcting grammar errors. This process of rereading and rewriting your notes will help you remember the information better. Finally, I recommend adding pictures from the PowerPoint presentations that relate to the information that you wrote about. Just like Asia's note-taking technique about drawing pictures in your notes, having a visual representation gives you another way to look at the information and is helpful to refer back to when you're studying.
Okay, so this note-taking technique is about improving your notes after class. It has a lot of different benefits and can really improve the overall quality and cohesion of your notes so that when you need to refer back to them in the future for exam studying or assignments, they are easy to understand and all the information you have written is properly laid out. This technique also allows the opportunity to add more details either from other resources such as your textbook or gives you the time to find how other concepts in class connect together. When applying this technique, I recommend that after class, you reorganize sections to make them easier to read and understand where concepts fit in. It is also easier to do all this when the information from class is fresh in your mind. So if there are any messy sections or areas that are confusing, you'll be able to fix these problems while you still remember. Another beneficial tip is to read through your notes and find any areas that seem to lack information. So whether the notes you put seem vague or missing key concept, this is a time to go back and fill this in. You can also make sure that all the information you have written is actually important and needed for the understanding of course content. So this is your chance to slim your notes down or to make them more concise. When rewriting your notes, you're also given the opportunity to expand upon certain concepts in class that need more attention. So here, I recommend that you add notes to areas that were missed during class or need extra emphasis. You don't necessarily need to rewrite everything. Even going back in and fixing a few sections using the tips I talked about will really help improve your notes too. But if you're fully rewriting your notes, you can use many different techniques, like the ones other presenters have talked about, that display the information learned in a specific class better. So for example, in Kin 132, this is a great time to go through all the diagrams and add or fix annotations or put these concepts into Quizlet or on cue cards. In Kin 120, a lot of the information connects and overlaps with many different areas. So this is an opportunity to create a mind map or write them out in a notebook to better see related ideas that will help you understand how all these concepts connect together.
Okay, so for some courses that is straight memorization, Quizlet helps a lot. So we'll go over how to make questions. I recommend after class, go through your notes and make questions yourself. In order for this to be effective, try to make questions shortly after your class, such as like the day of or the day after. This is beneficial as you making the question helps you critically think about course material. Try to make surface level and deep questions. So we'll take a look at some examples. So this would probably fall under the easy category. For example, Kin 110, show a picture of a bony landmark and ask yourself, what is this? And then on the back, have the answer. And then this would fall under the medium category. So still 110, you can name the origin, insertion, action, and innervation of the muscle and have the answers on the back. And finally, this would fall under the harder category. For example, Kin 131, you might ask, explain the process of excitation contraction coupling or describe an action potential, anything like that. So this is good because you have to mentally go through all of the steps, and it's beneficial because it makes you think and you get the answer right away. What's really important about this is for the best results of Quizlet, use it if you know that you can commit to doing a few each day. This is called active recall, and Quizlet has its best results when you're able to do that.
Hi everyone, I'm Simran and I'm going to be discussing the different strategies and techniques to use while doing textbook readings and or journal article readings. In my opinion, I think it's more beneficial to do readings after class opposed to prior to class. I know many profs encourage pre-readings, but sometimes it's difficult to understand the readings, especially when it's a very new topic and it's difficult to understand. So attending class first can give you a better understanding of the main topics and help you make connections from the things your professor professor mentioned in class. After attending the lecture, I would suggest first completing lecture notes, then integrating your textbook notes into lecture notes, because majority of the time, your textbook and lecture notes overlap. This will help you save some time so you're not repeating certain definitions or words in your notes. Next, I will be discussing 4 techniques that you can use for textbook readings. The first is to read and highlight. This technique involves reading the text and highlighting main points and ideas as you read. In my opinion, this is not my favorite technique unless I make notes either by hand or by typing while reading, and just highlighting the main points as well. I feel like it helps me comprehend the information better. The second technique is to create questions from the textbook readings, and you can use some of the techniques mentioned by my other teammates, such as Quizlet, physical flashcards, or a Word doc. An example of how to create a question from the material is if the sentence in the textbook states, the largest area of the brain is the cerebrum, I would rearrange it to create a question like, what is the largest part of the human brain? And then on the opposite side of the flashcard, you would write the answer down. And the third technique is to stop and summarize. After 2 to 3 pages, or after like a big or main topic, I like to stop and repeat certain topics and definitions to myself. And this allows me to check my understanding and make notes of areas that I'm struggling with so I can go back to review them, or I could ask my professor or my friends. The fourth technique is to restate many ideas and topics after you're done reading. This is a great way to check your understanding. Personally, the techniques I use are the first one, so reading 4 to 5 pages and then making notes. And then I usually like to create questions from my readings as well. And I also like to restate my main ideas and the topics by either saying them out loud or to a friend. Next, I'll be providing you with some tips for textbook readings. So bolded words, majority of the time professors will want you to know the bolded terms in the textbook, and they're usually multiple choice questions on exams. When integrating textbook notes with your lecture notes, I would suggest writing like the textbook notes in a different color, so you know which materials from the textbook and you know what materials from the lecture notes. This was also mentioned by Suprita as well. Next, plan to read 10 pages a day. This will prevent you from overwhelming yourself at the end of the semester and having all your readings piled up at the end. Next would be to read aloud or talk about your textbook readings with your friends. Lastly, I know a lot of people have or leave readings to the last minute. So if you're overwhelmed, try to split the textbook readings with a friend. And the next is going to be an example. Yeah, so as you can see on the presentation here, what I've done is I've on a Google Doc, I've created a table. So if you just go to insert on the search bar and go to table, you can insert as many rows and columns as you'd like. And if you can see here on the left side, I've written like the definition of systolic blood pressure, and on the right side, I have the definition of it. So then when I'm reviewing for my exam or for just any other tests, I have both of them on the same page there. And thank you for everybody for listening to our presentation.